I declare open this public hearing of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Public Works into the proposed Australian Institute of Sport Revitalisation Project, Canberra in the ACT. In accordance with the committee's resolution, this hearing will be broadcast on the Parliament's website, and the proof and official transcripts of proceedings will be published on the Parliament's website. I also remind members of the media who may be present or listening on the web of the need to fairly and accurately report the proceedings of the committee. My name is Graham Perrott. I'm coming to you from the southern suburbs of Brisbane in Sunnybank, and we'll go around the state, starting in North Queensland.
Andrew Wilcox, Federal Member for Dawson and Vice Chair of this committee.
Karen Andrews, Federal Member for McPherson on the Gold Coast.
And New South
Maria
Wales.
Kavasic, Senator for New South Wales.
And the ACT.
Dave Smith, Federal Member for Bean, ACT.
Tony Zappia, Federal Member for Macon in South Australia.
And then to the west.
Tracy Roberts, Federal Member for PST in Western Australia.
Thank you very much. I now welcome representatives from the Australian Institute of Sport to give evidence. For the Hansard record, would you please each state your full name and the capacity in which you appear?
Thank you, Chair. Kieran Perkins, the CEO of the Australian Sports Commission.
Robert Medlicott, General Manager of A.I.S Performance at the Australian Sports Commission.
Nisha Fisher, General Manager of Projects, Australian Sports Commission.
Thank you. Although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, I should advise you that these hearings are formal proceedings of the Parliament. Consequently, they warrant the same respect as proceedings of the Parliament itself. Giving false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may be regarded as contempt of Parliament. Mr Perkins, would you care to make some brief introductory remarks before we proceed to questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a brief opening statement that I'd like to make. The Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra has been recognised as a nationally significant institution since it was constructed in 1981 and continues to be an important and iconic symbol of Australia's commitment to sport and the power of sport to unite and inspire the nation. The A.I.S has been the home of sport in Australia for over 42 years and continues to be critical to the success of athletes and sport we love. The A.I.S plays a crucial function in connecting our decentralised, high-performance sports system and is the only place in Australia where Australian teams can come together and be accommodated in large numbers in a one-stop shop capable of supporting high-performance sports training, education and research. The A.I.S model has been so successful, it has formed the benchmark for supporting high-performance training and pathways and has been replicated both around Australia and the world. The Australian Sports Commission is closely connected with each state and territory's own academies and institutes of sport, providing a national lens and support to ensure Australia's high-performance sport is and remains world-leading. The AC manages the operations of the A.I.S site and provides a critical leadership role in supporting an inclusive and sustainable high-performance sporting system in the lead-up to pinnacle events, including our home Brisbane 2032 Games. The AC's commitment to maintain and evolve the A.I.S as a world best centre forms a key component of WinWell, Australia's high-performance sports strategy, an initiative which was co-designed by the entire Australian high-performance sports sector and launched in 2022. In January 2024, a comprehensive independent review commissioned by the Departments of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts released its report recommendations. The review made 12 recommendations and confirmed the need for urgent and crucial investment to revitalise the A.I.S campus in Canberra. In response to the review, the Australian Government committed significant investment of $249.7 million for the revitalisation of the A.I.S campus in Canberra in the 24-25 federal budget, including for the construction of 3 new facilities: new athletes accommodation, a multi-sport climate-controlled dome and a high-performance training and testing centre. This investment is significant for Australian sport, for our athletes ahead of the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and ensuring our athletes have access to the best testing and training facilities possible, enabling to perform at their best and inspire future generations of Australians. This project is the ASC's highest priority, and we are committed to support Australian athlete, team and staff support staff's preparations in the lead up to the Los Angeles 28 and Brisbane 32 Olympic and Paralympic Games. The AC is connected with all key parts of government, has established robust project governance, process management and risk mitigation frameworks, and is committed to ensuring the project delivers the best possible outcome within the available funding envelope, including undertaking procurement approaches to best mitigate risk and ensure fixed cost contracts wherever possible. The Australian High Performance System is unanimous in its support for the revitalisation of the A.I.S, as are our government stakeholders, the broader sports sector and the local Canberra community. This project will ensure the A.I.S maintains its status as an innovative, world-class state-of-the-art facility, leading in high-performance sport. New and revitalised, it will be capable of supporting world-leading outcomes for traditional and emerging sports, and the A.I.S will be better connected, foster increased collaboration and be fully accessible to ensure all athletes, teams, support staff and site users are able to maximise the benefits of their time on our site. We know the continued provision of specialised sports science, medicine and innovation will be provided by the revitalised A.I.S and is critical to the lead up to Brisbane 32. And with the completion of this project, we will be witness to the most successful era of high performance sport in Australia's history. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr Perkins. We'll go to the Deputy Chair for questions first.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, Mr Perkins, will these proposed facilities be adequate to maximise the opportunities for our Australian athletes to dominate at the 2032 Olympics?
Thank you. Look, with the funding that's available and the opportunity that we've been given through the approval of this budget, we are confident that we will be able to significantly support and uplift in modernising the delivery and approach for athletes as they prepare for Brisbane 32. As I'm sure you would understand, sport, like many industries, is one of those that will tell you that we never have enough and we always need more. However, with the specific plans and approach that we know we need to undertake, in consultation with the system, as you will know, over the course of 2022, we developed, in conjunction with the entire high performance system, the WinWell strategy. That's an industry strategy, and that WinWell strategy reinforced the need for the National Institute Network to take on very specific roles and responsibilities of delivery across the country to support our athletes, and the A.I.S's role in that is clear, and we do believe that the facilities that we have the budget to build will adequately enable us to fulfil that role.
Thank you. Just changing gears for another question. So, to the athlete accommodation. So what potential does the facility have to accommodate future growth, and is it scalable?
So as it stands at the moment, we have circa 650 odd beds on site that we are able to potentially deploy. As you would appreciate, through the COVID pandemic, the utilisation of those facilities had to be adjusted to ensure the health and well-being of athletes with the context of managing engagement in living quarters differently, and that has reduced our overall consistent delivery of comfortable utilisation to about 400. And so with this uplift of another circa 200 beds, designed in a way that we will be able to fully utilise these at all times. Our current facilities, just by way of explanation, I suppose, if we get certain teams that come in, for instance, you're not going to cohabitate a women's under-18 Australian water polo team with the men's the Wallabies, for instance. They have different requirements, different needs, training cycles are different, and obviously the safety of all participants on site needs to be managed as best we can through the site. Our current facility does require breaking up and unfortunate segregation in a way that doesn't allow us to fully utilise the space we've got. This new facility will be fully utilisable at all times, and what that will mean is that we will have a return to the capacity that current needs sees at our most high-end utilisation. I would say as an ambitious CEO that it will be flexible to a point, and there will no doubt come a time when we will be at capacity and have to turn people away. But in all honesty, that will be a good problem to have in the medium term.
Thank you. And just one more, Chair, if I may. My understanding is the A.I.S infrastructure is ageing. So what's the design life of this proposed works?
So the new facilities will, and that's actually a very good question. In terms of their overall life utilisation, I don't know the answer to that off the... 40 years. 40 years, there you go. Thank you, Nisha. So 40 years in line with our current facilities, which also were originally constructed with that time cycle. Noting that they're at 40 years, what has been gratifying to us is that the quality of construction in our existing facilities is meant through work that's been more recently done on our infrastructure condition reports, that most of the facilities that we have still have 20 to 25 year viable life cycle remaining within them, which is good. However, the new ones, yes, 40 years is the intended utilisation cycle of depreciation and that will be built into them.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Deputy Chair. Senator Kovacic.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. The review that prompted this scope of work was broadly consulted across the sporting community. Would you be able to give us an insight into who will be able to access these facilities, from elite to pre-elite athletes, and also how does the ASC select the sports that will able to be supported by your facilities?
Thank you. So the Australian Sports Commission obviously has a very significant remit. If you look at our entire organisational scope of responsibility as is embedded into our Act, it's from participation right through to elite. And as a consequence of that, we go through a recognition process, which at current count has us in the high 90, I think it's 95 sports, 96 possibly, off the top of my head, sports that we recognise in this country. Within that, though, there is a smaller group of high-performance funded sports. Those sports are selected based on our commitment to deliver or support delivery of results for pinnacle events, and those pinnacle events, as currently agreed within the Winwell strategy and is historically the case, is the Olympic, Paralympic and Commonwealth Games. So the sports that compete at those games, they are those that are within the high-performance frame of reference. Beyond that, obviously then each of those sports are required to deliver specific strategies and strategic outcomes, as well as overcome certain hurdles in terms of providing comfort for us around their financial viability, national integrity framework compliance, and other risk mitigant processes to ensure that they are organisations that have strategies that are going to deliver the most important outcomes within that high performance frame. And each of the sports in their high performance programs put together what it takes to win strategy, which was agreed in this most current Los Angeles cycle for summer sports, for Paralympic and Olympic sports in October of last year. And for our winter-based sports, coming up to the Milano Cortina Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games in February of next year. They're coming to the end of their 4-year cycle for those strategies, with Commonwealth Games, Glasgow 26 also being an endpoint for the Commonwealth sports. Within each of those sporting frames, obviously there is pathway programs and development cycles. The site in Bruce, we prioritise first and foremost those categorised athletes that sit within the high performance system, within those what it takes to win strategies, of those sports, and currently it's 31 sports that request to utilise our site. And then beyond that, we do make our facilities available when there's capacity to development and pathway programs for pre-elite athletes who are on the pathway to categorisation. And then beyond that, we also, where capacity is enabled, because as I mentioned, our high-performance funded sports get priority. But beyond that, we also do at times have other camp activities like junior development, international groups that come to do work on site, as well as commercial activities as needed.
Thank you. Nothing further from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator. Mr. Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of questions from me. Mr. Perkins, is it likely with the changes to the accommodation options that we'll see more long-term athletes return to the A.I.S?
I wouldn't go so far at this point to say likely, but it certainly is a potential. One of the things that we're very conscious of is our role within the National Institute and Academy system, so the National Institute Network we refer to, and that is a decentralised system where the state and territory-based institutes and academies provide the daily training environment for high-performance athletes. Some sports, especially team sports, however, do recognise and acknowledge that for athlete development and team cohesion, coming together for longer periods can be quite significant. And as it stands at the moment, we have basketball, volleyball and gymnastics programs that have long-term stay and athletics. Thank you, Rob. And athletics that have long-term stay. In the conversations we've had around the planning for our site and the master plan conversations that we have also had other sporting groups that have had conversations with us about whether or not long-term return to centralised programs may be valuable for them. But at this point, it's not part of the I guess the push from our end. We see our role as being camps-based and bringing national teams together, and that is really the focus of the facilities design and our plan.
Thanks. And look, it makes sense for that drive to come from the sports themselves. And
yes.
Just in terms of emerging sports, like I have to admit, I got much more into climbing than I expected with the Paris Olympics. Obviously, one of the challenges with some of those emerging sports is that not necessarily having the sports infrastructure that might be at that sort of Olympic level. Is there an opportunity through these works to possibly address some of those issues in providing Olympic level sort of infrastructure?
That was actually one of the findings within the independent review, and certainly a very significant point of feedback across our stakeholder groups that obviously the sports that were relevant and most important to Australia back in 1981 when we were formed aren't necessarily the same as 2025 and beyond. And so absolutely that is has been an ongoing gap in delivery for us. And I'm proud to say that, yes, the new facilities will absolutely enable us to better support sports like climbing, like BMX, skate and others. We, of course, don't sit on our hands, though, and outside of the bounds of the specific hearing that we're having here, take a moment to, plug ourselves a little bit to recognise that we actually bought the climbing walls from the Paris Olympics and Paralympic Games.
Oh, excellent.
They're here. They're waiting clearance from customs as we speak, import, and we've been doing a significant amount of work on understanding the structural and engineering requirements to get those up, where we can actually put them within our current facilities, which will be compromised because we don't have the height requirements to enable the speed climbing wall and the lead walls to be constructed indoors. but the bouldering walls definitely will be indoors, and we will find some external places to put the speed and lead walls, so that while we won't have the all-weather, all year round climbing access for athletes, we will enable our Paris athletes and those who aspire to relive those competition venues in the coming months.
The Canberra climbing community will be very excited about that. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Yep. Mr. Zapier.
Thanks, Chair. Kieran, which mainstream sports are not properly accommodated for at the A.I.S, and is there room on the current site for future expansion, perhaps in 5 years' time or whatever?
In terms of what's not accommodated, I will defer to Mr. Medlicott on that, because my gut is none, but Rob will know the specifics of that. The second part of your question, though, in terms of expansion, so obviously the 65 hectares of site that sits within the National Capital Plan for the Australian Sports Commission, we do have some pockets that are currently undeveloped, and the capacity to develop those pending the budget for infrastructure is there. There is areas near our existing football fields where we could actually quite quickly and quite easily deliver more grass fields, as well as synthetic field environments. We're conscious, however, and this is part of an ongoing conversation that would need to happen with governments both federally and in the territory, that the existing stadium is at end of useful life and creates lots of very animated conversation within the ACT, and that's part of the Bruce Precinct Plan conversation. We also have the athletics stadium, or in track and stadium, which is at the southern end of the site. The running surface that's on there is within 2 years of its useful life in terms of it being certified as an international standard track, and the facilities around the stands, the catering and bathrooms are not really at a standard that is required, and the utilisation that they get from the community, as well as the programs that exist on site, mean that we will have some choices to make in the future as to whether or not investment continues in those facilities, or whether or not there does need to be an adjustment of the site to ensure that we can continue to provide the high performance training and support services, which is the A.I.S's first main priority, but also taking into account and doing everything that we can to continue to support the community, because from the minute I got this job, it's been made abundantly clear to me that the Canberra community highly values our site, highly values access and the ability to utilise it, and we're conscious of that constantly in the decisions we make, and would look to maintain and extend that where it's appropriate. In terms of the sports that don't currently get support.
Mainstream sports-wise, we don't have a velodrome, so cycling, sailing, unless they came out on the lake here. We do rowing out on the lake. Our aquatics facilities cover everything except diving, so we don't have diving. But we do cover pretty much every team sport, every field sport, court sport. So
is the velodrome in South Australia, which is in my electorate actually, pretty much the best velodrome we have?
I'd say that and the one in southeast Queensland are the two pinnacle ones presently.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Zapier. Ms. Roberts. You might just...
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, just unmuting my phone. Thank you for the presentation. It was really well done. Thank you. I did have two questions, one on cost and one on past, but you've adequately answered them. So, as a result, Chair, I haven't got any questions for Mr. Perkins. And excuse my voice, I'm losing it. Thank you.
No worries, Tracy. Karen?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to understand any potential disruptions to the operations of the facility as a result of the proposed bills, and specifically if anything has to be demolished to make way for the construction, what will happen during the transition from the existing facility to the new facility, which I'd really like some more information on. And then will there be demolition of buildings post this new build?
Thank you for that question. So obviously one of the things that we are very conscious of is that we have significant programs and operations on site that we can't disrupt, and so no, the building works will be done in a way to minimise and in fact we intend to eliminate impact on site. That's part of why the choice to build greenfield was ultimately settled on. Because one of the initial plans that was put forward for consideration did include the demolition of the existing athletes' village with the construction of the multi-purpose training and testing facility to go onto that site. That was deemed non-viable for two reasons. Firstly, the disruption and the time that it would take if we had to demolish the original building first and put up before we could start construction of the second. And secondly, we did not receive any funding for demolition within the budget approval. And to be frank, we just don't have the money to demolish those facilities. One, because they're significant in scale. They're structurally incredibly robust, as was the case in early 80s, late 70s, early 80s construction, and it would be take significant work to bring them down. But more so, there is extensive utilisation of asbestos throughout all of those facilities, and obviously the requirement to appropriately manage the demolition and removal of asbestos through facilities like that just meant that the cost was significantly beyond what we could absorb within our existing budget frame, and so we needed to come up with solutions that saved us that money, hence why we've gone greenfield in the new buildings.
So what will happen to these buildings over time?
So one of the pieces of work that we're yet to undertake but will be engaging in forthwith is the development of a master plan. So the history of that is over probably the last decade, the Sports Commission has done many versions of a master plan, from the gold-plated, titanium-filled impossibility through to more pragmatic approaches. With the commitment of this funding and the three builds that we've got, that now puts us in a far more pragmatic position to be able to do a master plan for our medium to long term that actually gives us the certainty of what we can deliver and what we need to do with those existing sites. Because of the infrastructure condition report work that we've done and the acknowledgement that the facilities that we have all have a good 20 to 25 year life in them from a structural perspective, at this point in time we have no intention to demolish anything. We will be repurposing and reutilising those facilities for current unmet need or the expansion of opportunity. And that expansion is quite nebulous at this point in time, but it could include things like the Australian Capital Territory Academy of Sport currently exists on site. Providing more space and better facilities for them is an option that we will look at. We currently don't have any radio imaging capacity within the A.I.S facilities, and that's a bit of a gap for us. If an athlete gets injured and needs that, we've got to send them to the hospital. Having that on site would be beneficial, but it requires very specific infrastructure needs. And then, of course, when you look at facilities like the current gymnastics hall, that's a very significant space, indoor space that we'll be able to utilise for lots of myriad different uses that sports could require, and that will depend on budget and funding. So we're actually looking forward to undertaking that process and further expanding the capacity of support that we can provide.
So, Chair, can I just ask one more question as a follow-up to that then, just so I'm clear? So the training, the testing, the teaching spaces that will be replaced by the high performance training and testing centre, will they continue to be used in the short term, or will they effectively be mothballed until it's determined what the new use is going to be? And similarly, what will happen with the existing accommodation?
So I guess the performance support and medical services areas that you initially referred to, so they actually currently exist within one of the central buildings called the A.I.S. High Performance Centre. We have recently consolidated our corporate office spaces as well as our A.I.S. office spaces into those facilities. We're utilising the spaces above and adjacent. When the medical services and testing and research areas move into the new buildings, there will be many areas of compromise in our current corporate office spaces that will enjoy absorbing and taking advantage of those. And the other area of need that we have at the moment, which still requires master plan design work, but would be an obvious extension. As it stands at the moment in that building, we also have our engineering facilities. So one of the things that we provide for sport is bespoke engineering capability from designing and providing bespoke knee cups for Jess Fox's boats that she utilised in Paris, through to providing prosthetic adjustments for our Paralympians to take the equipment that they're provided, which is often quite expensive and unique, but further design and develop bespoke changes from an engineering perspective, as well as recovery equipment, and the list goes on. Those, to be frank, geniuses currently work in the bowels of a dungeon of a bit that we've shoehorned them into. The new facilities won't, unfortunately, have space to enable them to expand into the new areas, so they will also be utilising significantly more space that's currently taken up by those medical services within the existing building.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all from me, Chair.
Thanks, Karen. Mr. Perkins, I'm going to start with some micro things and go to a bit more global, I suppose. The sports dome, and I've only seen the picture, but recently this committee had to deal with the CSIRO Road coping with a hail damage that occurred in January 2020, I think. It was quite significant. So talk me through the dome structure. What was it? I couldn't quite make it out. Was it like the Gabba, that sort of sailcloth sort of stuff? Or
so obviously part of the work that we still need to do will be to very specifically settle exact design, because as you pointed out appropriately, thank you, Rob. Lessons learned from some of our government family around the impact of weather, well beyond, for instance, hail. But it is expected to be a fabric roof structure. It will incorporate airlocks and will be essentially inflated. The expectation is that the design will have what you might call a skeletal structure internally, which will facilitate lighting, camera equipment and other technology testing that will be utilised within the sports surface environments themselves. But the fabric that will be utilised will obviously be rated to an appropriate level to ensure that we don't have likely impact of those significant storm events. But I think it would be safe to assume that we also can't guarantee everything. That storm you mentioned, it did cause damage on our site with, fixed roof, steel roof, or corrugated iron roof environments as well. So we'll balance that. But certainly it's fabric and it's inflated. is the kind of the basest view.
Are there, do they exist already, like in Kuwait or some other, I don't want to compare Canberra summer to Kuwait, but, you've got some pretty extreme temperatures in Canberra.
So yes, they do actually exist globally, and it's been one of the things that's been interesting to go through this process, because I think we, from a sports perspective, made the assumption initially and went Northern Hemisphere. When you look across Northern Hemisphere training environments, I mean, there are countries that we compete against that in winter have temperatures down into the -30s, -40s, and in summer get up into the +40s and beyond in the one environment. And so they obviously have very significant utilisation of these types of dome facilities, from those that are permanent through to those that are not, that can be moved in and out as the seasons changed. What we found when we started that work is that, as is probably to be expected, Australia has capacity for innovation, and we do all sorts of wonderful things that you just didn't realise. And there are actually a number of domes in Western Australia through the Pilbara and even further north, I believe, where communities have, and I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe been put up by, supported into mining communities through infrastructure investment to provide all year round climate controlled sports facilities for those communities. So it's not unique, and we will take the learnings from those and utilise their expertise in this process.
And is it sorry, but is it like a jumping castle? Like when it's on, you turn the air on, because you don't want to be heating, the dome on Christmas Day or something like that when there's no one in it or anything, or because even with solar panels, I assume the electricity bill is going to be significant in the 100% renewable ACT.
Yes, it will. And no, it's not like a jumping castle in that you don't deflate it and inflate it at will. Once it's up, you need it to stay up. Because as you'd imagine, and was as an example in the pictures of the concept, we'll have lighting. There'll be things like goalposts and other bits in there which aren't easily removable. In terms of the climate controlled environment, look, don't get me wrong, this is actually, and we're well aware, this is going to require an uplift in our energy usage. We've already engaged in the ACT Evo Energy to make sure that they're brought in early on the journey to support us in that work, to ensure that we've got access to enough energy. But we will also be undertaking significant work to ensure that we do all that we can to ensure the environmental stability of the dome itself, that energy usage is kept to an absolute minimum through the design and utilisation of the facility. Yes, PV is not going to solve it completely, but one of the things that we're testing in the next design phase is taking a leaf out of recent significant infrastructure projects that have occurred here in the ACT with the utilisation of geothermal heat recovery and enabling a significant reduction in energy utilisation to ensure stability of environment. What I'd also probably say, just from a conceptual piece, as you're thinking about that, the domed environment, we wouldn't be looking to, for instance, keep that all year at a perfectly controlled, 24 degrees or whatever it might be. It'll be cooler in winter and hotter in summer, but in an environment that enables consistent training through those periods without disruption for athletes. Not perfectly climate controlled to their competition environment. We're actually building the environmental chamber to solve that problem as we speak.
And just to add to Mr. Perkins' comment, Mr. Perrott, it is intended to be a 24/7 facility as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. And was that geothermal one? Was that using some of the War Memorial technology?
We have already actually, yes, engaged some of the project team at the memorial to learn from them, from the experience that they have had with both the design and now implementation of that equipment. And so, yes, we are engaged with the teams up there.
Have a close yarn to them about budgets as well while you're over there as well, because they've been before this committee as well. Now, in terms of the accommodation, this is just a trivial question, but is it one size fits all, the same room for the gymnast as for the basketballers, or can you have scope, or, you know, like, is it, how do you accommodate all of the range of athletes that go through it?
So one of the big things that we struggle with today, and I guess is a really significant learning for us, is that because of the way that we utilise our site, we do actually need every room to be able to accommodate every kind of athlete, whether that's a gymnast or a basketballer or a high needs boccia athlete. We need to make these facilities completely inclusive, and so they will be consistent in their design in terms of how we make sure that all athletes, regardless of their needs, are able to fully utilise the spaces. Because as we saw more recently with we held a boccia championships on site, and we've got a world championships coming up later in the year. It is unacceptably difficult for us with our current facilities to facilitate the needs of athletes like that, and we see that on the reverse side. Through the engagement of expert suppliers, the beds in the residence of champions are all long enough to accommodate the tallest of our basketballers, but try to fit them into the athletes' village, and all of them run out of room very, very quickly, and it's really limiting in our ability to deliver.
You couldn't have the tall section, or
No, because I have aspirations that, there will be times when we might have 250, 300 really tall people on site, and we need to fit them all in at once. As per when the gymnasts are in for camp, we need space for dozens and dozens of them as well. So it's flexibility is our key.
Well, that's a good segue into just to clarify my understanding of our wonderful federation and this decentralised system. So, leaving aside, was it cycling, diving and sailing, is it like a hub and spoke sort of model? Did you personally spend much time in Canberra when you were swimming?
So yes, as a matter of fact, I did, but for me it was always a camp-based model. So in not through design, actually through more luck than anything, I happened to use the A.I.S as a hub and spoke model back then. But back then, of course, we had residential scholarship holders who lived here full time. And it's only been since 2015 that actually the system nationally has come together to agree and coordinate a hub and spoke model. That hub and spoke model, though, I have to highlight, isn't universal in its application. As you would be aware, for instance, hockey has a facility in Western Australia where the hockey roos and the kookaburras are based, because that suits their purposes, as well as...
But in that circumstance, we do all the pathway camps for hockey.
We do. They do still utilise our site. Anyway, and there's others.
It's not one size fits all. It's whatever that sport works out. I think the swimmers still go to Townsville, still do certain things, so it's whatever works for all of those different sports. So.
Oh, look, absolutely. And in fact, I mean, that's a good example. So we actually have a Swimming Australia camp on site today. I wandered past the pool, and there had to be at least 50-odd athletes in there in a training camp. And one of the things that we do continuously reinforce is it's not one size fits all, and there's different needs at different times. We are close to completion of the inclusion of altitude facilities within the residence of champions. which will allow 22 athletes at once to be housed in accommodation with common areas that can be ramped up to over 4,500 metres, but 3,000 is sort of the nominal training environment. For a group that size, for a group that size, to then be able to eat, sleep, train, get performance support, recovery in the one walkable environment, we are still very unique in that space. And so for different teams at different times when they need to bring people together and not lose time, you know, driving half an hour to the physio and an hour to the training facility and back forward to their accommodation and those sorts of things, they will come and use our site still. So
does someone have a giant Gantt chart for 30 sports or 90 sports working out when they get, so that we're getting maximum use of the facility?
Oh, 100%. So it ebbs and flows, as you would imagine, depending on competition cycles generally. We are chock-a-block at the moment and would expect to remain that way pretty much now through till the fourth quarter of this year as we move back into summer competition schedule. And after the Winter Olympic and Paralympic Games and the Commonwealth Games, there'll be some sports that will obviously turn into some quieter downtime. But to be honest, I would have to say over the last really 4 years since we've made a concerted effort to be more accessible, there's very few periods of times when we're not operating at capacity based on certain athletic requirements. And as a side note of recognition, actually as it stands right now, probably our biggest restrictor and bottleneck in the site is recovery services. The recovery services pools that we utilise were built in 2007. And of course, as recovery processes and technologies have advanced and improved, more athletes utilise it, more athletes require rehabilitation and support through that. And with teams coming on site, the sequencing of when they get to use the recovery facilities does tend to then limit the amount of teams at any one time we can bring on site. And it's something that we need to address within the new scope.
And second last question, it's ANU and other universities in Canberra, in terms of a life post sport, is there thought of using that, or is that up to the spokes to work out in terms of their athletes?
So look, as it stands, we actually have extensive relationships and engagement through the Big 8 universities and beyond for everything from research and development through to performance support delivery and execution, because as you note, more and more universities are building training facilities which enable in the daily training environment athletes to perform. But Mr. Medlicott's probably got better detail on actually what we do today, noting that our master plan and the Bruce precinct work that we're doing also does include University of Canberra and Canberra Institute of Technology within the frame, and we already engage with both those institutions in terms of Bruce, ACT, where we geographically exist, but it does go much beyond that.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, if you're talking about athletes beyond their career, we very much have a policy and a process around athletes ensuring that they continue with their education throughout, and we're part of an elite athlete-friendly university system, which is, I think, all 42 universities or whatever it happens to be. So we have a lot of programs in play to work with sports to ensure that athletes are building academics alongside of a career whilst they're doing their sport, because they can't just wait to the end and fix it then.
Yeah. And my final question, if you could make any comment on, and it was touched on, the local use, whatever an ACT local is, of the facilities, and then the international, particularly drifting into Team Australia, not the Olympic team, Olympic, Paralympic, but our connection to the Pacific and the like in terms of our engagement with the globe and how we are a safer place by looking after our neighbours. So local and international, different ends of the bookshelf, I suppose.
So from a local perspective, the engagement with the community is quite broad. So it starts from, we have a daycare centre and a swim school on site. The main or the original swimming pool, I guess you could call it, is utilised for public swimming outside of high performance requirements and needs, as well as tours. So we are still one of the core national institutions that all Year 6 kids who come to Canberra have the opportunity to visit. And over the course of the last year, we've had over 120,000 Year 6 students come to the A.I.S. and be inspired and have the opportunity to use SportX and burn off the energy they can't use when they're visiting facilities like this, for instance, and they need to be a little bit more quiet and controlled in the halls of Parliament. And then beyond that, we also make our facilities available for broader community use. So the A.I.S. Arena, which reopened again at mid last year after almost 5 years of being closed, that gets utilised by community sport groups, concerts, community days of all sort, as well as other sporting needs. I don't think we've held one yet, but formal dinners, all sorts of opportunities that go within there. The running track, as I mentioned, that's utilised extensively by the local Canberra community. And we also have holiday camps programs and other things like that. So there is quite a lot of activity in those parts of the site that aren't being utilised specifically by high performance at any one time. Where that extends to then, and you mentioned, for instance, Oceania and international. So we do make our facilities available and the experts that sit within the A.I.S. performance environment to run camps, coaching clinics, officials like sporting officials, development programs, governance programs for administration, and the list goes on. And obviously that engagement comes in is originated in a number of different ways. The sports-specific stuff tends to get originated by the NSO engaging with their international NSO equivalent and asking for and then combining camp programs and competition programs within the A.I.S. As well as we have some specific MOUs ourselves with international other institutes and academies, Singapore, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Canada, France, Japan, New Zealand off the top of my head, but there's other relationships that we have which then trigger those countries to have reciprocal engagement programs, and we learn and work together.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for the great work that you do. And there being no other questions, I thank you for your attendance here today. You'll be sent a copy of the transcript to make any corrections to the transcription, and I declare this public hearing closed.